Yo, Afro,
How you doing,
what
man?
is
How you
good,
feeling?
man? I'm feeling good. It's been a
Good.
few months. We both have some good news, but why don't you start? Share your good news. We've been MIA for a few. What's it been like 3 months, four
It's been
months
a
maybe?
while.
A little too long. Explain to them why. What have you been up to?
Well, man, first off, it's good to hear your voice again. It's been a while. Both been busy. During our last podcast, I was a bit depressed. I'm not even gonna lie. I was upset. I had failed Network Plus not once but twice. That was a very difficult exam for me. Pap had to slap me straight. Had to say, "Look, get a pen and paper and start writing this stuff down." I was like, "All right." So I did that, and I finally passed it. Finally got that Network Plus, and now I wish I could say the journey's done, but now we're on to security.
Yeah. So what'd you do? What'd you do differently? You failed, and then you had to go back to the drawing board. But would you end up doing that helped you to pass?
Um, so I originally started off with Mike Myers, but then I went over to
Oh
Andrew
boy.
Ramadal or somebody, and I just completely started over. I was like, there's something in here that I'm missing. I'm going to start all over. And this time, when I would take my practice tests, I would write down everything that I got wrong. It was like punishment for myself. Like, if you got
Nice.
this wrong, you have to sit here and write it down. And so I ended up having like 20 pages of just notes. And that's what helped me, because you're right. Writing it does definitely commit to memory
Yep.
a lot better.
Writing it, talking about it, all
Mm-hmm.
the above helps.
Yeah.
So you write it down. Did you when you went in the final time that when you passed it? Did you feel more prepared, or were you just as
Absolutely.
nervous?
No, this time, every time I've taken the test before, I felt like I've run out of time. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have enough time to finish. But this time, I had more than enough time at the end. And like, as soon as I finished, like, hit the next button, you have to do the survey or whatever, I was like, I already knew I passed, kind of thing. I was like, I passed this. Like, I'm not even nervous about it. And I passed. But yeah, definitely felt more confident. Definitely at the end, I was like, oh, I have tons of time, dude. Um, Whereas the first two times, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to submit. Like, I can't, I don't know anymore. And I failed. So
Yeah. Nice. Glad you passed. That's what he's been doing. Plus, he's in
yeah.
school, so he's been doing school and Network Plus, and now you're doing school and Security Plus.
Yes. And I wanted to ask you, like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but whenever I fail something a bunch, I'm like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm in the wrong field. And I start kind of just getting into my own head kind of thing where I'm like, maybe this is just isn't for me. Like, maybe, do you feel like that too?
Used to. It's
You
been a
see,
long
not
time
anymore.
since I felt like that.
You're a
Yeah,
professional now.
it's like, yeah, professionals, we don't feel like that. We go. Um, no, I treat failure as like stepping stones, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if I fail at something, instead of thinking, oh, I failed, like I'm not good enough, I'm like, I was almost there, or like,
Yeah.
what, like, I feel like I could have did better. Like, let me take a look at what I got wrong, and then I want to keep trying at that point until I
Mhm.
pass. After a while, you start to realize that failure just shows you what you don't know.
Yeah.
So it's basically just it's just free material, right? So it's like uh, if you fail at something, it just means there's some things in that thing that you've failed in that you don't know, which
Mhm.
allows you to now study for that. So by the time you pass, you're not only passing, but you're proving to yourself that you have successfully studied the material that you previously failed. So it's like a my vocabulary's garbage today, but think of like if you want to measure improvement, you can
Mhm.
measure improvement by well, having a failure. Your failure would be a baseline, and then when you actually pass, that's a measure of improvement, showing that you've succeeded your old self.
Yeah. What you've learned. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Baseline. It's a very big security plus term. What's the baseline of this?
Yep. Yep. Whenever you do any kind of like asset inventory and well, I think a lot of things you want a baseline. You want to baseline your network. You want to baseline like pretty
Mhm.
much resources on assets. You might hear people say like XDR, EDR. We need that new EDR tool. Sure, put it in, but you probably want to baseline your resources
Baseline it
first.
first.
Yeah.
See where you're
So
at.
your CPU doesn't hit 100% as soon as you throw it in there.
Start cooking your system, dude.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a couple months. We know what I've been up to. What have you been up to?
Yeah, so I haven't gotten my the official paper yet, so you can see it, but I've been finishing my thesis and have gotten my doctorate degree. So I'm
Ooh.
Doctor Pap now.
Let's
Um,
go,
yeah,
dude.
in cybersecurity. My thesis is submitted. It will be made public probably sometime this week. I'm actually anticipating it to go public tomorrow.
Yeah.
When it goes public, I'll share it. People can read it.
Yes.
Feel free. But on to the next. I'll be doing some more research. I'll be trying to help out
Let's
with some
go.
research, and now's the time. So during that time, I've been just focused, like hardcore focus on my thesis, which includes machine learning in the realm of cybersecurity. So if you're interested in that, how to use machine learning for cybersecurity, my thesis is on that.
Shoo. And head over to the channel for the official
Oh yeah.
video series that'll be coming out for Dr. Pap here.
Yep.
So I want to know, Pap, what was the hardest, like, if you looking back at your entire doctorate program, what was like, man, this was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life?
The hardest thing in my doctoral program, I would say, was going back to um like I'm trying to remember the name of the class, but it was pretty much like hardware, right? So going back to computer hardware, and we went beyond just, this is a serial port, this is an AND gate, this is an OR gate. We went beyond that. We started talking about like gate arrays and things like that, which is just like a lot of like math using like factorials, not only identifying hardware trojans, but dumping hardware code into a software and trying to read a bunch of random frequencies and bytes to try to figure out what this Trojan's doing. So there's a lot of stuff
Oh my God.
and I mean, of course, that was fresh in my mind, but since it's been like a year and a half since I took that class, so I would need to go through a refresher. But it was like field programmable gate arrays, so I think it was like FPGAs. We had I think there was something called starts with a P. I can't remember, but there was a lot of stuff that we did there that involved like heavy math down to the hardware level.
Dang.
And also we did a really cool experiment that I don't remember the full details because it's been like a year and a half. I definitely need to go back and reread my notes. But so the idea is that when processors are made in the supply chain somewhere, some of those processors are tampered with. In the past, it was probably easy to detect tampering because you kind of scratch the logo, you try to reattach the logo, you kind of see scratches and things like that. Now it is getting increasingly harder to detect. So there are ways to still detect tampering. One is think about if you like scratch off a logo and then you have to sand down the processor. Technically, the size of the processor would be slightly smaller than the actual. Yeah, if you measure it. So things like that. But we got to learn like a lot of the different methods that supply chain companies use to determine if something was tampered with or not. And that was pretty cool.
That's
so
awesome.
I would say as far as hardware stuff, that was
hardest, but like most
stuff.
interesting, I guess you could say. Was that your like most interesting part of the class? Because you seem to really remember it.
It was hardest. I don't think it was the most interesting. It definitely was one of the hardest. I definitely do think hardware. Oh, and obviously side channel attacks. We were learning things like using an oscilloscope to measure power output.
Yep, I remember you telling me
hardware.
About that.
Yeah, and from that you can derive encryption keys and essentially hack the device. So that was interesting. as part of hardware.
Yeah.
It was the hardest. I wouldn't say it was the most interesting in my opinion. I do think it was the hardest. Um, I would say for as far as most interesting, the two classes I would have to, it would probably be a tie. One was our cryptography class. That was um, difficult because we had to like throw away the calculators. So he's like, we're gonna
Do by
encrypt.
hand.
Yeah, we're gonna encrypt and decrypt with RSA. We're gonna encrypt decrypt with Diffie-Hellman. Elliptic curve cryptography, AES, basically all the current standard cryptographic algorithms. Well, we started with old ones, so we start with like C decipher, DES, triple DES, and then we moved, we moved all the way up to the most current standard. But each one we had to encrypt by hand with just math, and then decrypt by hand with just math. For each one, it was pretty difficult. And then the final exam for that class was just that he just gave us a bunch of like encryption problems, and like we had like public private key for the asymmetric, and then for the symmetric we just have the single key. And then he gave us certain like variables based on what the algorithm was. So different algorithms you'll need like RSA, you needed two prime numbers. Diffie-Hellman, you'll need the it's not a prime number, but when you run the modulo equation, they should equal on both sides. So you kind of need both persons. I forget what you call it. I think it's like public key or so. I'll just say, but and we had to do that by hand, which was pretty difficult but interesting. That was my favorite, one of my favorite.
Bro, you're obsessed with encryption. You
Yeah,
love encryption
I mean, doing
so
it
much.
doing it by hand, you start to learn a lot of things. We started to learn things like we started to learn like different ways to try to hack encryption, like
Yep.
chosen plain text, known plain text. Like, there's another one where you just kind of guess the patterns. There's another one where you try to just guess one letter, and then you just kind of fill that letter in whenever you see that encryption pattern. Things like that. And then the other class was the machine learning class. That was pretty interesting. From there, the machine learning class, we pretty much just trained our own model. And that was about it. We
Is that
trained
the
our
one
own.
you showed me
I showed
the
you a
big
class.
Excel sheet. You showed me the big Excel sheet of all the different
Oh, that was
LLMs you were doing.
No, that was part of my thesis.
Oh my
So
That was insane.
yeah, so to prove my thesis, there requires a bit of statistics. That's not just me, but that's pretty standard, actually.
Yeah.
To have in order to show something, you need data output, and so that was just a lot of my model's output. So things like accuracy, recall, F1 scores, precision. It was just all those outputs, and obviously it was structured data, but it was a lot of data. So I took that and made it into visualizations for people to better see things. So the actual paper has the visualizations, but if anyone wanted to kind of further that research, and I would just give the output and data for them to see, kind of thing.
Yeah. So they're not starting completely over. So
Yep.
when you were talking about the hardest class, I have a malware analysis class, which is probably one of my favorite classes I've taken so far. I really hope to get the professor on the pod. Hopefully he's watching. And in our most recent assignment, we had to do a little bit of computer science. We had to learn how memory is stored in the CPU, how it's called, like the functions are called from like top to bottom.
Oh, you're talking about the stack.
The stack. And
Yeah.
it's the first time I've ever got to touch any kind of computer science because unfortunately my major is a business major.
Yep.
So I don't really get to go into too much computer science, but it was really interesting to the point where I was like, do I want to study computer science? Really cool.
It's helpful, especially understanding, because especially if you're going to script or so, understanding how like the stack and versus the heap works, like heap being like dynamic and stack just having like LIFO, right? Last in, first out.
First out.
Understanding how those work are helpful, especially if you're dealing with like different arrays. And then you start to get, if you wanted to get into like, developing something that, let's say, for time complexity, right? So let's say you want to make like a vulnerability scanner, and there's something in computer science called time complexity. And instead of defining what that is, I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
what the goal is. The goal is to optimize your code to run as fast as possible. So normally, some people go for something like O of n, which is like just like a linear line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you probably want to go for something like O log n, which is logarithmic, which would be
Mm-hmm.
a lot faster. Um, and in order to do that, instead of just having like an array where everything just kind of um, like when you have an array, everything you kind of pop. Let's say arrays like the stack, right? So it's just popping off. The last one pops off first, but you want
Yeah.
to be able to manipulate the array differently. Then you probably want to start getting into like data structure and algorithms and things like that. So which is also computer science.
Yeah.
And so that will help you to manipulate an array in different ways in order to
Mm-hmm.
optimize your code. So I think it's worth it.
Welcome back to reality, guys. If you haven't been able to really follow along, I apologize.
Um, just for those who aren't in computer science, I recommend at least take there. If you go to YouTube and you
Mm-hmm.
type in like computer science 101, there are like free classes. Like Harvard, for example,
Yeah.
recorded a live
I
class,
used to
put it
watch
up
those
there.
when I was working.
Just watch them. I mean,
Yeah.
something like time complexity sounds difficult, but
Complex.
it's not really. If you know basic algebra, probably. I think that's algebra. I mean, I would say it's algebra. If you know algebra, you probably understand how time complexity works once you kind of see what it is.
Mhm.
You measure time complexity by input and output. So if you have if you put one piece of data inside a model, or not a model, but your piece of code, and it takes 1 second to shoot that data out, and it's just one. So you put one in and one comes out in 1 second. Then you do it again, one in, one comes out in a second. Then it's O log n. Like
Mhm.
it's a constant time
Jeez.
that your code is running. But if your code is getting faster, then you know that it's probably like O log n or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to do a lot of business classes. I know my statistics. I know my accounting. I know my whatever. So I think now that I'm done with that, I'll probably try to go into more of the computer science for my master's because I like it. I got to wet my whistle, as the professor said, about some computer science stuff, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So it's probably where I'll go next.
Yeah, it's definitely
Hopefully,
helpful.
Pap can help me.
Computer science. If I also recommend dabbling a little bit into computer engineering.
Mhm.
Um, it is very cool to see how computers work from the engineering perspective. Computer science, I mean, the computer science courses I took dealt with a lot of software. The
Mhm.
computer engineering course I took, well, it wasn't even a course. When I first started, I was kind of doubling up with computer science, computer engineering. Computer engineering part I took was super interesting. We built our own motherboard. We basically took
Okay, that's
this
awesome.
dead board and we like installed some buses on it. And the goal was to have like 8 lights light up in a sequence, and like
That's awesome.
not all at once, but like kind of like Christmas lights, like alternating. And so we got
Mhm.
to use some gates, resistors, and that was pretty cool. Um, so learning that actually helped with like understanding how computers work too.
Dude, I wish I learned that because I've been trying to build this server for my house, and I gotten two motherboards, Pap, two that have had bent pins, dead,
Oh wow,
DOA, dead on arrival, done for,
yeah, you
and
need
I am
PGA.
just right. I used to think like I used to be so angry at AMD. I was like, why do you put the pins on the CPU? But I was like, okay,
So
so if you,
they
huh?
don't. It depends on the one you buy.
Right, I have AM4.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't have
AM.
AM5.
Yeah, so I have AM. I used to have AM4, and
Mhm.
it depends on the series. So, like for example, Ryzen, I think their 500 series or 5000 series is pen grid array. So the
Right,
pins are on the CPU.
on
But
the
I think
CPU. Yep.
their seventh. I think it's their 7000 series is land grid array.
Really,
Yeah. So it
I haven't
depends
even looked
on,
into
and they're both AM4. So I think it depends
what.
on the actual series that you buy.
Yeah, I have the one with the pins on the CPU. At first, I didn't like it because like if you bend one of these pins, you are out like a $300 CPU versus maybe $150 motherboard.
Yeah.
But now that I've gone back, I'm like, you know what?
Yep. Yep. No, because I went from, because I had a pen grid array. I had Ryzen 5000,
Mm-hmm.
Ryzen 5000 series, but it was AM4.
Yeah.
And I think it was like Ryzen 5. I think it was the 3000 series actually. I forget, but it was AM4, and it was on the pens. And then I upgraded to
Yeah.
Ryzen 9 7950 X3D,
3D. Yeah.
the
That's
7000
a land grid.
series. So the 7000 series is pin grid array, and that's what I have now.
Okay. Nice. I
Yeah.
like,
So
we'll see. We'll see. I don't know which one I like better, and I don't know which one is better, or if they're doesn't really matter. But
I don't think it mattered
it's kind of
much.
frustrating.
I just you know saw this thing on 3D Cache, and then I saw 3D Cache helps with like machine learning.
Mhm.
And I figured, well, since I'm doing my thesis on machine learning, might as well, instead of
Go off.
renting cloud computers, might as well just run the models on my new 3D Cache processor. But it didn't. I don't think it made too much of a difference.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, you're probably right. Ugh. CPUs, computer science, computer engineering. Let's give the people what they paid for, shall we?
Yeah, wait till quantum processors come out and they start going
Brother.
on sale for like 10 grand.
I heard you're looking at the Threadripper. No.
Yeah, the Threadripper was like 1,000 cores. I'm actually gonna install like a motherboard. I'm gonna buy a motherboard and install like 6 of them.
Okay.
That's it's gonna be a
Oh my
high
God.
electric bill. I'll say that.
Brother. And you don't have to pay for heating though, so you run it in the winter. You have a little space heater.
Well, it doesn't really get winter where I live, so
Oh, that's true.
it's gonna
That's
be a
true.
sauna in here 24/7.
Home sauna, brother.
Yes, sir.
What we were talking about before we started this pod, work has been a little bit wild, but likely, in between my rounds, I love to just look around different threat actor data league sites, see what I can find. I'm from Houston, so those who don't know, it's no longer the Juice Box. It's no longer Minute Maid Park. It's now Daikin Park, which is, I believe they're one of the 8 Southeast Asian countries who owns Daikin. But they got hit by ransomware. Not recently, but they have been hit, and their data is on the Quillen website. So I got to look around that, poke around that, which was pretty fun. Houston Symphony has been hacked. I got to poke around them for a while. But one that really stuck out to me was Palau, which is a country in Oceania. Is that how you say it? I've never heard of Palau.
I've
Um,
never heard of it either. But the Ministry of Health.
Yes, got hacked, which, health industries getting hacked is never good. But when I looked, there was a lot of children's PII, children's birth certificates, children's health information, babies' health information, which was a little bit confusing to me. I was like, what
Right.
are you going to do with a child's information? They can't
Yeah.
really, um,
I guess.
you want to talk about that first before we go into the lockbit thing?
Yeah. I guess if I were to put myself into a threat actor's shoes, and I were, I mean, I hate to say this, but if I were to take a child's personal identifiable information, which by the way I will never do, just saying if by some weird, I don't know, let's say
You go on your villain arc.
somebody controlled my brain and made me do this. The purpose would probably be for either extortion of the parents or B, saving it for when the child becomes of age. Now, option B doesn't really work out too well because they can.
It's a long-term investment.
Well, yes, but like if, for example, in the U.S. system, if your Social Security number is compromised, you can have a new one issued. Because these are children, their Social Security numbers are relatively clean, so issuing them a new one isn't going to like cause too much of their own damage, if that makes sense. Now you have like their birth certificate that's probably not going to be, it's not going to be updated, or it might be, who knows? But it's not going to be changed. But again, Like, how far are you going to go with the birth
Yeah.
certificate? Um,
Yeah.
so there's part B would be a little interesting. I think thinking about it, probably some kind of extortion with the parents. Like, hey, I have your kid's
Uh,
information. You know, I'll do
Give me
something with
some
it if you
money.
don't. I don't know. I'll apply for credit cards with it if you don't you don't pay me. Something like that. But I just think that, I mean, the U.S. has laws around protecting children online. It's even up to so if a child applies or if a child creates an account in a website, that website is fully responsible for that child's information. So it's actually common for some websites to just not store children information. It's too much
Mhm.
of a risk. Overseas, you have other laws that also aim to protect children, including like GDPR, which protects everyone, not just children.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, those are there for a reason because obviously kids are precious, right? Many people seek to protect kids. Actually, I can argue that probably every country in the world has bodies of people who seek to protect kids. So it's a little weird that this hacking group is okay with grabbing
Yeah.
children information.
Yeah. Which I want to talk about into our next point. Lockbit, evil Russian guys, whatever. A while back, they hit a company called Sick Kids, and when they found out, like the leader of Lockbit found out that when somebody in their group hacked Sick Kids, that dude was like kicked out of their group. They publicly announced, "We're sorry. The guy who hacked Sick Kids is out of our group. We gave them a decryptor for free, and we completely apologize." Which shows like an honor amongst thieves, I guess you could say. But I mean, Quillen just doesn't seem to care. So I think they're number one on my radar for this year. I think they're going to be the number one group to watch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's even realistically, right? So, honor among these, but also, there are generally specific reasons why apps will go after a company.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason why someone wants to hack another company is for financial gain.
Right.
Um, that's like the number one reason for a lot of these apps. You don't really get that by hacking children's data. So
Yeah.
there is no gain from doing that, which Lockbit I'm sure recognized that, which is why they're like, this is not, we gain nothing. All we do is
Mm-hmm.
we look worse
Yep.
and we essentially hurt children. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know what Quillen's incentive is to go after children's data.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I said, I'm going to be watching them a lot, especially this year. Especially with the amount of stuff that's being hit in Houston, which is always whoa, that's my home. So seeing that was like, wow, kind of thing. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. Keep you guys updated, and hopefully,
Heard it from Afro. He's gonna keep you updated. Pods, stay tuned because he'll talk about it the next pod.
oh, hopefully, I hopefully don't want to talk about it. I hope nothing else happens to children because, what did Macaulay Culkin say in Home Alone? No one messes with children on Christmas Eve.
I would
No
hope
one messes
so.
with children. Period.
Yeah, don't mess with children. They're precious. They're actually vital to human survival.
Yep.
They're necessary.
Right.
Just like every animal out there, we all want to we all want to continue the human race, continue all these
in some capacity.
we don't want anyone to go extinct, not even animals. So save our children.
What was that? The wolf that they brought back? So off topic. It's like some wolf that they
oh really
brought back from extinction. Yeah. What was it? Wolf from extinction.
Really?
Scientists say they brought back dire wolves from extinction.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. I was looking at animals that we humans have run out of this world, and there are some interesting ones.
Yeah.
Um, one was like a, I think it was like a red pigeon or something like that. I don't know. Like so up, northern U.S. pigeons are like gray or black.
Mhm.
Um, and the black ones have like this bluish tint to them.
Mhm.
But apparently there were some like ones that had like red bellies or something like that.
Oh
Um,
dang.
and they were hunted a lot, so they don't exist anymore.
Damn.
But that's unfortunate. But since we're talking about extinction, that's what I learned recently.
Extinction.
Um,
Oh,
yeah. In other news,
so sad.
yeah, it's super sad. In other news, what's this about the there was a scroll, right? That was
uh,
the
yes.
what do you call that scroll?
The papyrus, Greek word, the first to free a Greek word from its prison. Papyrus. Yes.
Yeah,
Speaking
the
of children,
Herculaneum, uh,
Herculaneum.
Papyrus. Now we're probably
Oh,
butchering the name here.
Roman town of Herculaneum.
Yeah, but there
Awesome.
was
Yeah. Speaking of kids.
an
Yeah. Go
old
ahead. Sorry.
scroll that had uh, that was recovered from like the Library of Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very curious and intelligent high schooler. I think he was Luke
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Farrader. Did I say his name right? I don't know,
Yep.
but Luke pretty much utilized machine learning and continued to train a machine learning model on being able to recognize characters, but not just the characters, like obscured variations of those characters. And eventually was able to uncover, I believe it was like 10 characters of the scroll, utilizing the machine learning for obscured letters. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, not only is that such a intelligent thing to do for a high schooler, I applaud him for that. He's going to go a long way with his interests and what he knows. But
Absolutely.
I also hope that that story encourages other people to utilize machine learning to further technology in general. I think AI can be a good thing if we know how to train models, things like that, not just from the
Mm-hmm.
consumer side. So, interested to see what else comes out from this.
Yes, I think we touch on it every single time we talk on this podcast. Today's youth, man. I mean, going back to Sonic, Neswin, we talk about it every time, but I always want to highlight that because today's youth is just doing some really cool things, and I'm happy to see that they're getting opportunities like this. Right out of high school, getting to get really cool jobs, getting to get to go do cool stuff that a lot of other kids who aren't as dedicated don't get to do because I think that's really cool. I've been using AI a lot this week, but not to uncover cool ancient Greek text out of random things. So he's utilizing AI, and I think it's really cool. He's utilizing it in a way that is maybe not normal. I don't know. Is that a normal thing for AI to do?
It is. So in the AI's, well, I'm going to say machine learning because machine learning is a subset of AI.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is a normal thing for machine learning to be able to. The whole idea of machine learning is to train it on some kind of data and then have the model be able to predict, and that's the whole point of it. So it is normal.
Mm-hmm.
What is not normal is for it to predict something that. So we as humans were not able to uncipher this text, right? So meaning there is no. Well, let me phrase that. There are some texts that we as humans can decipher, but there is no like historic data on this specific scroll. Like being able to uncover the contents of the scroll hasn't been done. What is uncommon is being able to feed data into a machine learning model, so train the model, and then have it predict 10 characters on this scroll with high accuracy. That is the whole
Same.
purpose of machine learning, but it's more common to have errors like, false positives in the
Yeah.
output of a machine learning model than it is to have a true positive. So I still think it's really impressive because the amount of accurate and accurate, I guess I won't say accurate, the amount of data that you would need to feed the machine learning model in order to recognize different patterns is
Yeah.
probably a lot. And to try to find different variations of text to account for that obscurity, you probably have to go through a lot of data of feeding that model before it is able to predict.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, I never wanted to get political on this podcast, but I'm really happy to see today's youth getting a chance to flex their knowledge and get to do cool stuff. So I think that needs to be a new segment of our podcast. Like every week we'll like highlight some brilliant young kid who's doing something crazy.
Yeah, there's a ton of them out there, and
It's ridiculous.
um, yeah, they all deserve that kind of recognition, especially for
Absolutely.
makes me happy to know that the future is secured somewhat.
Somewhat. Faith in
Somewhat
humanity
secured.
slightly
It's
restored.
slightly, not fully. There's still some of you out there that need to start looking
Yeah,
at machine
we
learning.
need to lock in, bro. Man. So coming up here on the end, do a short one today because let's face it, I have class on Monday and Wednesday for those who don't know, and basically from Monday to Thursday, I feel like I've been hit by a truck because I work overnight. I get to sleep for like 2 hours, go to class, come home, do a little bit of homework, nap before work again, and it truck. Uh, so
So you're a truck right now, yeah.
I'm actually a truck, it's trucking along. But I want to talk about, to finish up, kind of have Pap flex his knowledge on AI. I want to know, Pap, are we in a Terminator situation? Is Skynet a problem? Will this become like there's going to be a John Connor, somebody going to come back from the future, try to kill him because he's going to like figure out a way to destroy AI? Or what do you think? Let's set it straight. Put it all on the table right now.
So no, I don't think we're
No.
in the Terminator situation. I also think that the theory of time, right? Time that theory is a little, someone traveling back in time to save the future is a little busted, if that makes sense. Because if you travel back in time to save the future, you've essentially eliminated your future because that's an anomaly for the past. So you created a new future where you don't exist. So it's a little busted. Time is not linear, so I don't think that would work. But it would be fun to kind of theorize about it and imagine that it worked. I think AI as it stands today is getting more sophisticated. You have like GPT now able to draw more accurate pictures. If you give it your actual picture and you tell it to I don't know, change the background, it gets it gets a lot of details right. There's still some details it gets wrong, but it's progress.
Yeah.
Even videos, AI videos have improved a lot. I think unfortunately, I think we're heading into a time where AI videos are going to be used to spread more like fake news. And it's going to be harder for people to discern what is AI and what is not over time. Right now, it's relatively easy because you just, I don't know, you'll see an AI video and then like there's like a cup spazzing out or something like that. So it's like, it's pretty, at this point, it's like, okay, this is AI. But there will be a point where I do believe there will be a point where that's addressed. And it will be hard to determine whether a video is AI or not. Not to mention that, not to say that it isn't already hard for some people. Some people who are not into the tech world, yeah, it's pretty hard to identify. There is an advantage, right? Children growing up today seem to just have an eye for detecting when videos are AI and not. So that is our advantage, meaning that like there is still like sanity in the world, we'll say. But I do think besides that, the direction of machine learning and AI can also go in a positive direction. We're learning that you can train models to do things that we have not been able to figure out as humans. So knowing that, I think the direction of machine learning will be just that, trying to solve things that we have not currently solved with machine learning, and thus you're essentially using, because you're using a machine to solve these things, you're essentially reducing the amount of time it would have taken for us as humans to advance. So I
Yeah.
do think this will lead to better, more improved, and more efficient advancements. But then it's also going to lead to increased success of bad actors.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think a lot of threat actors are using AI to communicate with their victims, I guess. But also my parents are now using Chat GPT, which I never thought I'd see that day. They've actually called me up, like, Harry, how do I do this thing? And I'm like, all right, here's what you do. And I showed them, how to, set the prompts and whatever. And my grandfather, he has, my cousin gave him her old iPhone, and I have him on WhatsApp. So he'll send me like random videos of like Trump and Zelensky in like Mortal Kombat, and he thinks it's so funny. And I'm like, my grandfather is now involved in this AI kind of thing, and
Yeah.
it's really cool and and funny. But do you think there'll be a time when you think we'll see a plateau, like kind of like how in video quality, 4K, 8K, it's become almost impossible for the human eye to be even tell the difference. We've kind of plateaued when it comes to video quality. Do you think there'll be a plateau in AI where it's just AI is not advanced anymore? We have reached a plateau kind of thing. Or do you think it'll just keep getting better, 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 better to the point where it's almost Terminator?
Yeah. I think the so if we're talking about performance, I mean, I think it's going to be so I'm gonna say exponential, but I don't mean
Mm-hmm.
exponential in a way where it's going to keep multiplying. I mean, if
Yeah.
we're talking about improvement on the x-axis, right? So
Mm-hmm.
improvement this way, it would start to go that way. Meaning, as time progresses, the performance will, or the as time progresses, the progression of AI should start to slow down.
Yeah.
Um, I do think it's going to be like that. So in that case, when we talk about like time complexity, we would say
Okay.
that's exponential. Um, I think that eventually it's going to be normalized, right? Like, oh, okay, just like Google, right? Let's go to AI and let's see what AI says about this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think at that point, so the direction of the of machines are gonna have to, there's gonna have to be some kind of new thing that kind of pushes the direction of technology. But
Yeah.
I don't know if AI would be that direction. Uh it might help to like figure out that direction, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there's going to be, I wouldn't say a full plateau, but I will say there's going to be a point where AI, I mean, it's only a matter of time, right? Like right now it's being trained rapidly. Eventually there's going to be limited data to train it on. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually it's going to be this thing where we can only train AI data as the data comes out. So
Yep.
you're just reliant on that data to come out, which means now it's going to be trained at a far slower rate.
Yeah. I think there'll become a time where it's no longer Google it. It's now Ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, actually, there was a story that I had. I didn't read this one. I was actually, I think I was listening to it on YouTube or something, where there was a child and he was sick. I think he was having issues like controlling the right side of his body or something like that. Like he was having like stroke like
A stroke.
symptoms.
Jeez.
Um, he got checked out. He was perfectly healthy, but he kept having these weird symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And his parents didn't know what was going on. And finally, they actually went to ChatGPT and they typed in all of his symptoms. And GPT's like, oh, well, with all those symptoms combined, which would probably scraped his data from the public internet, it's like, usually they have, that means you have like a pinched nerve or bone in your spine or something like that. And so the parents like, that's weird. He brought him to the hospital, basically showed what ChatGPT did or said. They took an X-ray, and sure enough, there was like a pinched nerve or something like that in the spine that they had to like operate on. It wasn't.
Jeez.
It was like something weird. And they were trying to, the doctor basically said that that condition was so rare that
Mm-hmm.
there's barely any research on that at all. Meaning, ChatGPT had just happened to scrape research that existed
Somewhere.
that was just yeah somewhere that just is not common. Like you wouldn't be able to find it from a Google search.
Yeah.
So I do think that there is value there, and I do think that like replacing GPT with Google might be risky per se, but there are some benefits. Like if you say these are my symptoms, and ChatGPT gives you a recommendation, you bring it to a doctor, great benefit. If you
Hmm.
say, you know, I don't know, if you ask GPT like, I don't know, a question on some kind of factual topic, who knows? GPT might just spit out the wrong answer.
Oh yeah.
And then you have no way of verifying if you're not looking at other sources.
No, I 100% agree. We had a class. One of our first classes was like how to Google stuff. Google dorking, whatever. But even that for me, just Googling something and then having all of those results kind of just puts my brain into this weird spasmy frenzy. It's like, oh my God, there's so many options. There's so many things I could look at. Where do I even begin? Whereas in ChatGPT, I could just ask it a very specific question and it gives me a very specific answer, which for my weirdo, spazzy brain just seems to really, I don't know, it's like crack. It just, it's very, fine tuned to where I
Yeah.
can focus on it.
Yep.
Like I'm doing i3 and Arch Linux on my ThinkPad over here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I move these windows around? And I just asked ChatGPT. It's like, oh, click Mod V, and then your next window will pop up stacked. I'm like, that's exactly what I needed. Where if I was to go with like an i3 wiki or the Arch wiki, there's just so much information. It kind of overwhelms me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Google Dorking is helpful. I found that a lot of articles on Google aren't backed by research,
Very.
unfortunately. So one thing that I've adopted, one style of Googling, I would say that I've adopted is I'll ask a question on Google and then I'll go to Google Scholar and ask the same
Mm-hmm.
question, and you'll be surprised with how much like results aren't there. So it can be something like you know, 8 glasses of water is the recommended intake, and then your Google results would say you should drink 8 glasses of water a day, you should do this, you should do that. But you go to Google Scholar and there's no actual studies on drinking 8 glasses of water. And so you're like, wait, so where are these articles getting their information from? And then if you Google studies on 8 glasses of water, and then you'll see articles like uh, no actual study was done. Like it depends on the person or something. That's just
Yeah.
an example, right? There are many other um, actual things that I Googled that doesn't have any related research articles, but just has a bunch of articles of people saying stuff. And so I found that to be interesting.
That is
One
really
was
cool.
uh I guess it's a common thing that in New Jersey in the US it's illegal to slurp soup. But if you go to Google Scholar and you try to type in slurp soup New Jersey, nothing comes up. And then
What the heck?
eventually if you look further, you find out that it was actually just a rumor. It wasn't really true. But so many articles like were saying it's illegal to
It's
slurp
true.
soup. So
Yeah.
I think that even Googling, similar to GPT, where you're starting to get some skewed answers, it's
Mhm.
probably better to because a good article would probably reference a research article. So it's probably better to just look at the research article to begin with. And a research article is supposed to provide data sufficient to back up the thesis that's in that article. So whether it's right or wrong is up to that article, honestly. I mean, it's
Yeah.
up to the reader, I guess, but they're supposed to provide data for you to like be able to
Go
interpret.
back and do your own kind of. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. All right. Well, I guess my last thing I kind of want to talk about, and then we'll finish off here. Do you think ChatGPT has a monopoly? There was DeepSeek for a while. That was in the news. It was everywhere. Twitter has their own little AI bot. I don't know what's going on with Apple's AI.
Yeah.
There's Microsoft's. What is Microsoft's AI thing called? Copilot.
Copilot, yeah.
So you know, DeepSeek was here and then it wasn't. So I want to say like ChatGPT is like the Google of AI at this moment. I think they have a very huge monopoly.
I
What do you
think
think, Pap?
I wouldn't say they have a monopoly, but I do think they were the first to do it. So
Mhm.
the first to do something generally is the default for people,
Mhm.
which is why you see a lot of these people racing to do stuff. For example, Samsung, Huawei, which is another phone company, um, uh, LG. Um, I'm sure like Motorola probably wanted to do this, but I don't know, for some reason didn't. But Samsung, Huawei, LG are probably big phone companies that were racing to have flip phones, like
Mhm.
what 6, 7 years ago. Samsung was, I think Samsung was the first to do the flip phone. It was either Samsung or Huawei, but I think it was Samsung. So now when you think of flip phone, like instantly you think of like Samsung. Well, it also could be the fact that Huawei is not it's not allowed in the U.S. But so between LG and Samsung, Samsung was the first. That if we're talking about U.S. specific, because we can't use Huawei phones. Um, you think of Samsung, but if LG was the first to do the foldable phone, you would think of LG. So
Mhm.
there's a for companies, it's not just about releasing the better product and trying to monopolize. Sometimes it's about releasing the first product, because if you release a first product, that's what people associate that product with, the company,
Mhm.
and then at that point it gives you leverage on this monopoly, um, per se. But I say it's not a monopoly because there are still big companies that use other AI. So for example, GitHub, when you sign up for a
Mhm.
GitHub account, it shoves Copilot into your face. um like you have no choice. I don't even know if you could disable it, honestly. Like I still get Copilot emails of like, your repo has outdated libraries. I'm like, bro, I don't even use this repo. Like, I'm not even gonna update this. Um, when you install Windows, Copilot shoved in your face. When you
Yep.
open Bing, Copilot shoved in your face. So it's like when you Google something now, Bard, or I think they renamed it. It's not even called Bard anymore. Um, what is it? Google Bard rename. It's called Gemini. Yeah. So when you Google something, Gemini is shoved in your face, and it's like
Okay.
trying to answer your Google question, so you don't have to. I guess you don't have to click on links if it tells you the answer. Um, but the point I'm trying to make is, if GPT was monopolized, I think these major like software search engines, things that we're using every day, we
Mhm.
would have GPT shoved in our faces instead of Copilot and Gemini as well.
But even using Copilot and Gemini, I'd still say that ChatGPT is significantly better than those AIs.
Better,
Maybe
yeah.
I'm
So
not.
better, I would consider it to be better. At least the latest GPT iteration, yes. I don't know about monopolize. I would say it's probably sort of. So GPT is good at some things. I do think like as far as image generation, it's probably one of the best.
Stable.
Um, as far as responses, I actually like other like there's Claude AI, which probably uses like I don't know. They probably use OpenAI to tell you the truth. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I have no idea. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were just using an OpenAI API, but I actually like Claude's responses better than GPT's responses. I feel like
I don't think I've ever used that one.
GPT is a little robotic sometimes, but
Mhm.
Claude AI is more like direct and gives me exactly what I want. If that makes sense. Like it's like
Yeah.
GPT, if you're like, what is water made out of? Then GPT is like, oh, that's an interesting question. So first, and then it starts going on this whole paragraph rant, whereas Claude is just like HCO, and
H2O.
it'll say HCO, but
H2O.
then it'll say under that like, do you want me to break down each of these molecules? And then you could respond yes or no. And I'm like, it's so much like
That's kind of
intuitive.
cool.
It's like not only answering your question, but it's trying to predict what your next question would be and asking you beforehand. So I actually
So
like
what you're
that.
saying is it's streamlined. It doesn't help. It doesn't spaz out your brain with a bunch of information.
Yeah, exactly. Short, simple, to
Exactly.
the point.
To
That's
the
all I
point.
want. It's like those right, like if your computer's not working and you don't know what's going on, so you try to like YouTube a video, and then you find this random dude who uploaded like a 30-second video, and he's like, if your fan's not working, try doing
It's
this. And you're
this.
like,
Yeah.
dude, straight to the point. I loved it.
That's what I like. Yeah.
Subscribed, love it.
Follow.
Yeah.
Patreon, pay him. Oh my gosh, man. I think I'm all out, Pap. The truck is hitting. Look at my eyes. They're getting
Yeah,
droopy.
got hit by a truck. So yeah, we are going to be back with this podcast now that I'm done with school. Really going to be on Afro's schedule. If he's not, getting hit by trucks out here, then we'll be uploading. But for those who, those who love the podcast, feel free to comment your thoughts on any of these topics. Let's get some conversations going. Wonder your thoughts,
Absolutely.
especially this taking children's info.
Goodness.
Curious to know what you guys think about that, and also the future direction of AI and machine learning. Curious to hear about that.
If you want to learn more, Pap has got you covered. Go to Dr. Pap's channel and sit in the class because he's about to take you to school.
Ethical Pap, yeah. So I'm releasing a series on machine learning where we learn everything from the history to the most basic model. The perceptron is like the first neural network model modeled after an actual neuron, a biological neuron. So there's a couple of videos coming out. First, the history videos coming out, then the perceptrons coming out. We actually code one from scratch, and then we start looking at scikit-learn and making data sets and training models from scikit-learn on that data set and looking at the outputs and things like that. So
excellent.
Fun stuff. Hopefully it'll provide
That's
a
awesome.
foundational knowledge for people who are looking to do cool things with machine learning. But go check that out. Ethical Pap. We'll probably post it in the description or something.
Yeah, and follow along. I mean, if you're going to build one from scratch, follow along and put that on your resume for all you future cyber students out there.
Yep.
That'd be a cool thing to kind of talk about. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
if you're too lazy to follow along, I'm actually going to be releasing a GitHub repo of
Ooh,
all the code
so
that I
maybe
do
you have to
during
do
the video. So stay tuned. I'll be releasing that probably in a couple weeks.
Dude, I'm hyped. We're back. PaperTrail's back. Ethical Pap's back. Dr. Pap's back. Your boy Grant's back. Everybody's back.
Yes, sir.
Sorry for the hiatus. Sorry for the wait.
We don't say sorry here. We just say thanks for waiting.
Thanks for waiting. Like you had a choice.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Man, appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new and have not subscribed. Make sure you like the video so we can shoot this pod through the algorithm, and also comment.
Yes, please.
An algorithm, and with that, we should be able to get more cool people on like we've had in the past.
I'm hype. I'm hype for our next guest. Whoever he is, I don't know yet. Or she. Don't know.
On that note, we are out of here.
Peace.
Deuces.